Hello there. It is so good to have you back for podcast 2. And I am still sharing about my life as Josephine Delight. I believe on the last broadcast I was sharing about my husband Jack and how he would have me to take all of his clothing to the cleaners, and I would run errands for him all over town, and then I'd stop by the grocery store and I would shop and bring all those goodies home on the bus. I was always conscious of wanting to save money so Jack could have every dime for his needs. I wanted him to dress for success because he was always looking out for our future. And I intended to do my part. And then I would struggle home with the groceries and go in the house and I would cook him a feast. I would cook him a dinner meant for a king, and there would be roast beef and mashed potatoes and string beans, and he loved my candy yams. And of course, I had to make yeast rolls, and sometimes I would do yeast rolls, biscuits, and cornbread, knowing he couldn't eat it all. And Jack, he would not want to eat it all because he was always conscious of gaining weight. He did not want to do anything to interfere with his appearance in any way. And many times I would settle down and eat the leftovers or what have you. And oftentimes Jack would get up from the table and I would go into the living room with him and get a stool and place his feet up on the stool and get him a cup of tea, and he would watch television and I would go in and clean the kitchen until it sparkled, and he would go in and look around the kitchen. He said, "Josephine, I don't know how you do it. You just keep on excelling and outdoing yourself. This kitchen is sparkling." And off he'd go to take a shower and get ready for bed, to get up early for the job the next morning. And I would kind of sit down and plan what would I fix him for breakfast. And the next morning the house would just be reeking of fresh baked cinnamon rolls and all the goodies that he loved to eat. And then there would be errands to run, and Jack loved for me to go to this little hat shop across town and buy him hats. He always trusted me to buy him just the hat that he wanted. And he had so many hats. And at this hat shop, they knew how to do men hats in such a special way. And they decorated and put the different trimmings around it. Or however I would order it, they would make it, and it was just exactly what Jack would want every time. And I look forward to going into this hat shop. For some reason, I would go into the door, and time I get in the door, there was this peace in the atmosphere. It seemed to embrace me when I walked into the shop. It seemed to feel me somehow. I felt like I was in a sauna of love and a sauna of rest. And there were two sisters that owned the hat shop, and they were always so friendly, so loving, so kind. And they even had a church next door that they had started. And I just looked at them because there was something about them that spoke of rest, that spoke of peace. Couldn't put my finger on it, but one thing I did know, I love going to this hat shop and sitting down. You could sit down and get hot chocolate or coffee and just rest and take your time No pressure to order, no pressure to do anything but just rest. And when you got ready to purchase, or even if you didn't want to purchase, you were still welcome in that place. And I would sit and I'd look around, and some of the colors, the purple and the yellow and the turquoise and the gray, it all spoke to me somehow. And then there was this aroma that was in the atmosphere. I can't define it, but it spoke to my heart. And then I would get up and pick up Jack's hat, and I would leave and rush home to do my usual cooking. And then there were special times when I would go by Jack's job, and there were ladies there that were so dressed. They were dressed so chic. They were dressed so to perfection. I felt so dowdy. I felt so just like raggedy in a sense, because they were just manicured. They were polished, and they would look at me when I came in and look to me like they looked like they almost felt sorry for me. And I'm wondering, how could they feel sorry for me when my husband was one of the top executives at this place? And then Jack would come in, he would smile at me and give me some special instructions to run some more errands for him, or if he was going out of town, Josephine, be sure to have my bags packed. You know, just how I like everything, and make sure my shirts don't get wrinkled. And I would go home and I'd pack his bags, and everything was just like he liked it. And then I would just sit down in the silence of the house after he was gone, and sometime I would go out to the mailbox and check for mail or what have you. And there was this one neighbor I used to talk to, but we didn't talk too much anymore. She would ask me why was I always working and washing Jack's car and cleaning house and doing all these things. Why wouldn't you do that for the man that you loved? And then she was inquiring into our business, our personal matters, and asked me why didn't I drive. And I told her, I said, Jack had told me when we first got married, Josephine, you don't need to learn how to drive. I'll take you anywhere you need to go. But of course, as he got busy with his job, of course he didn't have time, and that didn't matter. I could take the bus, and I wanted to save him the extra stress and the time and the finances. Why should he stop those things that were important to us just to take me across town when I could easily walk, or either I could take a bus where I needed to go? And then there was the one time she was inquiring about something. I believe she had gotten some of our mail in her mailbox, and everything was in Jack's name. And she inquired, she said, I don't see anything with your name on it. And I said, Jack takes care of all of our private business, and he keeps everything in his name. The house is in his name, the car is in his name, everything, the insurance is in his name, our bank accounts, everything is in his name, I told her, for safekeepings. I wanted her to know I was proud of my husband, how well he took care of me. But after then, I didn't want too much to do with her. And then, of course, there was this other neighbor. She'd asked me, had I read the latest book by, I can't even remember the author now. And I said, I didn't have time to read. How is it that I could have time to read and sit back and read when there was so much to do? I had a husband that I was ministering to. I was helping. I wanted him to be a success. He always talked about, Josephine, I want to be a great success for you and I. And so I didn't have time to invest in reading a book. There was no time. And then there came a time. I was sitting at the table and was listening to. And maybe this is when I began to get a little sad feeling. I heard this little song or so on the radio, and it was a ministry station or something like that. They was talking about God. This lady was on, and I can remember the little tune, little song that she was singing. I can remember it as if it was just yesterday. We submit today. You're moving in a brand new way. Oh, we submit today without delay. We submit our will. We submit our will. Ooh, we submit our will. Not my will, but thy will be done. Can we lift our hands? We lift our hands. Take us to the promised land. Oh, yes, God. Yes, I don't know why that song just bothered me. And I began to think, do I have a promised land? Does God have a promised land? What kind of promised land? And then I would get up and I try to shake it off, but every once in a while that song comes back to me. And that's something about submitting to God. Well, anyway, I was busy, and the next thing I knew, I found out that I was pregnant with a child. My God. Jack and I were so happy, and Jack was hilariously happy, and he would do and say all kinds of funny things. And even from the very beginning, he knew that he was going to have a son. He knew. It was like the birth of our son was no small thing and no surprise to him. He just knew it. And I painted the baby's room, and I decorated, and I got down and I scrubbed, and I washed the windows in the room, and Jack would come in from time to time to see how everything was coming along, and he would remind me to make sure that I painted evenly across and just making sure everything was just perfect. And when I finished the room and he came, he saw it. He was so pleased, and he was pleased with the colors because I believed him when he said we were having a son. And sure enough, we had a son, and I never will forget that night. He was busy, and I had to go to the hospital myself alone, but later, when Jack came and the baby was already born, he was so thrilled. He was so excited. And of course, we named him Jack Delight. And from the very beginning, we called him Little Jack. And from the beginning, Little Jack was in love with his father. His little eyes would follow him all around the house, and when Jack would come in and they would play and Jack would talk to him. And when little Jack began to walk, he would run to his daddy. He was just so drawn to his daddy, and and I was busy doing work, so it just worked out just wonderful for us. My and how the days grew and the times changed, and somewhere along the line I began to get a little weary and a little tired, and little Jack grew, and as he grew he loved his daddy. He would always come to his daddy and say, "Daddy, can I do this? Or can I do that?" And Jack would get him little golf clubs and would get him little surprises, and they would go out riding. And it was beautiful to see them both walking to the car and getting in and driving off, and I would clean. I began to wonder, though, where had the time gone? Where had all the time gone? And then there came a time, it was time for our anniversary, and we'd been married several years, and this was the big night. And Jack said, "Josephine, put on something special. I am taking you out." And I looked, and behold, I had nothing special to wear. I had bought myself nothing, and I had gained quite a bit of weight. And I shared this with Jack, and he said, "Oh, Josephine, go out and just buy you something." He gave me a few dollars. It wasn't much by the standard of the clothes that I saw when I got to the shop to buy a dress. But as I browsed and I looked, they had this spandex type of a black dress, and I got that and bought that. And when I got home, there was a note from Jack telling me to meet him at this restaurant. And when I got to the restaurant, there was his friends from work and those polished females from work, and they were there at our table. And I looked at Jack, and he said, "I invited them to celebrate with us." And I sit down, but I was a little confused. Somehow I was looking for Jack and I to enjoy this time together. But pretty soon it was time to order, and my husband said, "Josephine, I'll order for you." And he allowed all of our guests to order. Some ordered salmon and prime rib and all these fancy items, and he ordered me liver and rice and the house salad. I was a bit disappointed, but I smiled. And I looked at Jack, and he was so entertaining and so gracious to all of our guests. But something began to sadden my heart for some reason. Well, I'm so glad you stopped to listen, and we'll share more in our next podcast. But I do hope you have a great day, and know that everything does not always stay the same. But I have a story to tell that I want to share with you. I believe that you will be blessed before it's all said and done. All right. Looking forward to seeing you later.